of 1961, proving to be an effective strike aircraft, comparable to the Royal Navy's Buccaneer or the American A-4 Skyhawk. But as primarily a mid-50s design, the Étendard was quickly becoming obsolete, even before it was a decade old. By 1970, the balance of nuclear terror had gone global. France's nuclear deterrent had become a reality under the guidance of Charles de Gaulle. Now, a nuclear-capable aircraft was needed for the French. In 1969, a naval version of the Anglo-French Jaguar was tested to fit the role of replacing the Étendard. Designated Jaguar M, this land-based aircraft proved that it had sea legs. Although the Jaguar successfully completed a round of carrier operations, the French Navy decided instead on an upgraded version of the Étendard. Extensive modification of the Étendard resulted in this, the Dassault Super Étendard. Although the Super Étendard shares the name of its predecessor, it is a 90% new aircraft. The fuselage was redesigned to accommodate the more powerful ATAR AK-50 engine. Aerodynamic modifications allow the Super Étendard to take off at a much higher weight. However, the most important feature of the new plane was its sophisticated navigation and target recognition systems. The Super Étendard was fit to perform a variety of functions from attack to the more passive role of reconnaissance. Using the 4 underwing pylons to carry bombs, the Super Étendard proved also to be a formidable ground support platform. This is heads-up display footage from the cockpit of an Argentine Super Étendard engaged in ground attack exercises. As the pilot approaches his target, a vertical line can be seen rising up towards the crosshairs. When the two meet, the pilot fires. For the role of ground support, the Super Étendard is equipped with rocket launchers under the wing and 2 30mm cannons under the nose. The Super Étendard can also be used in the aerial combat role, although it would probably stand little chance against a dedicated naval fighter like the American F-14 Tomcat. The Argentine Navy does occasionally practice dogfighting between its pilots. High in the clouds over Tierra del Fuego, one Argentine pilot gives chase to another. When the opponent becomes locked in the crosshairs, the pilot informs his squadron mate that he has shot him down.
02.
Despite its versatility, the major role of the Super Étendard is neither dogfighting nor ground support.
The major role for this plane is to launch the Exocet missile. This plane is really stable, really fast, for low levels in the sea. The missile actually can be carried at this point, and with a single missile with 2 planes, you can have a 99% of probability to sink a ship.
The Exocet missile itself is a very large machine, and attaching the missile to the plane is no easy chore. First, the 30mm cannons must be removed from under the nose of the aircraft. Then the fuel tank on the starboard wing needs to be removed to allow for the addition of a hardpoint, especially fitted to carry the missile. In strict military terms, the Super Étendard is a weapon platform, and the Exocet missile is a weapon system. Before an Exocet mission, avionics need to be installed behind and below the cockpit to ensure communication between plane and missile. The French company Aerospatiale named its missile after Exocetus, a genus of flying fish that skims along the surface of the water. The term missile understates the true hunting power of this destructive weapon. It is really more of a rocket-propelled kamikaze, piloted by a computerized navigational system determined to find its target. If the ship moves, the missile will follow. If the missile is temporarily confused by a defensive spray of metal chaff by the ship, the navigational computer will reorient itself and continue searching for the closest target. Determined to make impact, the relentless missile will not stop until it either runs out of fuel or rips through the hull of a ship. In 1979, perhaps anticipating their invasion of the Falklands, the Argentine government ordered 14 Super Étendards and 14 Exocet missiles from France. The following year, many of these Argentine ordnance men traveled to France to learn how to apply the missile to the aircraft. However, by 1982, only 5 of the airplanes and 5 missiles had been delivered to Argentina. When the war in the Falklands erupted, France withdrew all technical support and stopped all further deliveries of military hardware. On their own, the inexperienced ordnance officers and technicians were forced to resolve all outstanding problems relating to the aircraft and its missile. Using one of the Super Étendards for spare parts, the 2nd Attack Squadron began the war with a total of 4 airplanes and 5 missiles. Because each Exocet mission in the Falklands involved 2 attackers, the Argentines were limited to a total of 3 missions against the British task force. In these 3 missions, 2 warships were sunk, proving that in today's combat environment, an under-equipped adversary can pose a lethal threat to even the most powerful navies of the world. The air-launched anti-ship missile traces its roots back to before World War II. The Germans experimented with rocket-propelled anti-shipping bombs. Vaulted away from the aircraft with a rocket boost, the bomb would separate from its container and skip across the water towards the target. Close to the target, the bomb sinks, and the depth-activated fuse triggers the explosion. In World War II, American anti-ship missiles took the form of torpedoes, which traveled under the water instead of over it. In this role, the U.S. Navy Avenger sank countless Japanese ships, including the famed battleship Yamato. However, the first to use air-launched guided rockets were, of course, the Germans. During World War II, German rocket research was far ahead of its time. BMW engines were installed in rockets small enough to fit under the wing of a plane. The first major blow dealt by one of these weapons occurred in 1943 against the Italian battleship Italia, which was sunk while attempting to join the Allied fleet. Heinkel and Dornier bombers provided the platform for continued German testing on radio-controlled rockets. Here, a rocket is seen being guided directly into the center of the target shed. The most terrifying air-launched weapon used by the Germans involved the feared V-1 rocket. Equipped with its pulse jet, German Heinkel 111 bombers simply watched as the rocket streamed toward its target. In the course of the war, over 2,000 V-1s were launched, wreaking havoc on the cities of Belgium and France. The The French Exocet missile is perhaps the best modern equivalent of early German standoff missiles. Deployed from the small carrier Clemenceau, pilots of the French Navy are well trained in the elusive attack methods against enemy ships. After sneaking below the enemy radar, the pilot surges upward in order to obtain a radar lock on the target. At this point, the enemy spots the incoming plane, but it is too late. The pilot has already transferred the target information to the missile and sent it on its way. The destructive power of the Exocet has not gone unnoticed by the U.S. Navy. The U.S. supercarrier is a priceless commodity, and the Navy could ill afford to have an Exocet ripping into its hull. One method of countering this threat is the phalanx system, which simply rips the missile apart with a violent hail of bullets. The U.S. Navy has its own standoff anti-shipping missile. The Lockheed P-3 Orion is fit to carry the Harpoon missile, which can be launched from a range of over 60 miles. But in this role, it is only the Super Étendard and its Exocet missile which have gained notoriety in combat. Argentine Navy Lieutenant Hernan Machado describes a typical attack mission.
You go as low as you can, and about 100 from between 100 miles and 200 miles from the target. Or really low, you get low, then you have to connect the PA, the automatic pilot, and then you start looking on your scope if you can see the target. Actually, when you see the target, you load the target with your radar, okay, and then you transfer all the information to the missile, okay. At one distance, the system tells you if it's ready to launch the missile. At that time, you switch the armament switch on, and then just pull the trigger. 2 more seconds, 2 seconds later, here's the missile launching. And the missile accelerates, you break away, you never see your target. You're far away from your target. And then the newspapers, the newscasters or somebody, intelligence, is going to tell you you hit the ship or not. It's launch and forget. That's the mission today. And that is the way we did it in Malvinas.
The Exocet missile weighs nearly 1,000 pounds, so when it drops from the plane, the pilot must compensate for the sudden shift in weight.
Then you have a rate of roll to the left that, because I do the brake to the left, it helped me out to go 90 degrees angle of bank and start pulling 3 or 4 Gs, getting away from the target as soon as I can. Because normally there are patrols, air patrols right there in the fleet, or around the fleet, looking for you.
The British Air Combat Patrol never even saw an Argentine Super Étendard. As soon as the attackers appeared on British radar, the Argentine pilots were already steering towards home. For Super Étendard pilots, the Falklands War was a distant conflict that they would only see on the BBC News. By the time the British landed on the islands, the war was already over for Attack Squadron 2. All 5 of their Exocet missiles had been fired. Sinking 2 ships, they had done their part for the Argentine war effort. By early June, the British were making a final push towards Stanley. Retaking the Falklands was not as easy as previously expected. The forbidding South Atlantic winter and the harsh terrain of the islands complicated the British effort. In the violent struggle for the village of Goose Green alone, 15 British soldiers were killed.
Jones, Captain Wood, Captain James, Lieutenant Barry, Corporal Hardman, Corporal Sullivan.
Despite the setback, the British troops stepped up the ground war. Back when Argentina invaded the Falklands, they had kept many of their elite soldiers on the mainland. So at the outbreak of the ground war, the inexperienced Argentine forces stood little chance against the highly skilled British infantry and elite SAS teams. On June 15th, triumphant British soldiers marched into Stanley, and the Union Jack was again raised over the city. The local civilians welcomed the soldiers who had made the 8,000-mile journey to liberate the islands. 2.5 months after the Argentine invasion, the British were again firmly in control of the Falkland Islands.
El combate de Puerto Argentino.
In Argentina, the defeat in the Falklands led to a breakdown in the already precarious political footing of General Galtieri. A frustrated country forced Galtieri from power, and in October of 1983, free elections were granted to the people of Argentina. After an arduous 8,000-mile journey home, the task force was welcomed by jubilant crowds at Portsmouth. Margaret Thatcher had achieved both a military and political victory in the Falklands. But victory came at a price, as 6 warships would never return to England. With a democratically elected government now firmly in control, Argentina has long since normalized relations with the Western countries that had pitted themselves against it during the Falklands War. Despite all of the social reforms and political changes at the highest levels of government, little changes in the day-to-day operations of the naval aviator.
Every time you fly is different. I mean, every day you're different, you feel different, and sometimes you don't feel like you want to fly and you have to fly. But the majority of the time, you really are looking forward every day to go and fly. It's like tell my family, you do your job, you enjoy it, and besides that, they pay you. That's good. I like that.
The most important step in naval aviation training is the delicate art of carrier operations. With the Argentine carrier temporarily out of service, pilots of the 2nd Attack Squadron take every chance they can to train with their American counterparts. Whenever an American carrier rounds the tip of Tierra del Fuego, the Argentines use the opportunity to practice a few diplomatic touch-and-goes. The carrier landing is the most difficult chore in all of aviation. As the pilot approaches the ship, his pulse rate steadily increases. Although American and Argentine pilots hail from different parts of the world, they share a common bond that transcends culture and language. They are naval aviators.
We are unique because we are the only person that can land these things on the carrier, you know? It's really tough. That makes the difference. We do the same thing that the Air Force do, plus we go to the carriers. And that makes the difference. We are tail hookers, and we are the best. And Air Force knows that.
The Super Étendard is nearing the end of its operational career with the French Navy. Despite its advanced weapons systems, the Étendard's impending obsolescence is a reminder of how quickly defense requirements change in an era of mounting technological advancements. After serving as a multi-role attack aircraft with an autonomous French Navy since 1979, it will always be remembered for its role in the Falkland surprise.